Hello and a very good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So, after a very interesting inaugural session and a fireside chat, we are here with our first panel discussion. The topic for the panel discussion is digital transformation of states for effective governance through emerging technologies. And with this, I would like to welcome our moderator, Mr. Devapriya Nandan, who is the Senior Director and Head Public Sector Business Development, Oracle India Private Limited. And our
Thank
next
you,
panel.
Fahim. Thank you.
Thanks. And our panel, I would like to invite our panelist, Shri Manoj Kumar Mishra, sir, who is the Secretary, Electronics and Information Technology Department, Government of Odisha.
Namaskar.
Welcome,
Thank
sir.
you, Pavan. Thank you, Devapreet.
Namaskar, sir. Namaskar, sir.
I'd like to welcome Mr. Kumar Vineet, sir, who is the Special Secretary, Department of Information Technology and Electronics and Managing Director, UPDESCO, Government of Uttar Pradesh.
Namaskar, sir.
Welcome, sir.
Esteemed panel, good morning, sir.
Welcome, sir. Welcome.
I would like to welcome Mr. Akash Deep, who is the Commissioner and Secretary to the Government of Assam, PHED, and Director, Department
Namaskar,
of
sir.
Information Technology, Electronics and Communication, Government of Assam. Welcome, sir. I would like to welcome Jayesh Ranjan, sir, if he has joined. He'll join in a while. Then I'd like to welcome Mugdha Sinha, ma'am. She'll be also joining in a while. I'd like to welcome Mr. B. Sundar, sir. He is also joining in next 2-3 minutes. And Prashant Kumar Mittalji, he'll be joining in next 10-15 minutes for this panel. So, Dev sir, over to you. As the other speakers join in, you can welcome them and take it from there.
Sure.
So, I'll just take the backstage from here. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Fahim, and thanks Gov Connect to give us this opportunity and me specifically to moderate this session. I once again welcome the learned speakers. Most of them are very well known to me, and it's always a fantastic opportunity to speak to such enlightened people. And I have always heard them, their belief and their emotion in what they say is really, really very touching. So today's topic is digital transformation of states for effective governance through emerging technologies. The word emerging technologies makes a lot of difference today. The way we used to provide governance, even 20 years back, 10 years back, and today, the biggest differentiation that has been brought into the realm of governance is emerging technologies. So things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, we have been hearing these words for a long time, cognitive learning, analytics, real-time analytics. These have really added the required push, I would say, or the required sharpness to the rollout of digital programs. And we have been witnessing that in a big time. So we will hear about that more from the learned speakers. And as the others join, Sundar Sab, welcome to the event. Thanks for joining. So we will start off we'll do a round robin. We will go across to all our speakers. And I know few of them have a few hard stops, but we will try to engage them in very deep discussions and try to find out from them their opinion and their advice about what they are doing in this industry. To start off, I would like to invite Mr. Mishra, who is the Mr. M.K. Mishra, who is the Secretary IT for Government of Odisha. In fact, I had a chat with him yesterday night, and he made a very good point that we have been discussing COVID for a long time. What's beyond COVID that we should look at? And I think it's very refreshing to discuss beyond COVID. At 1 year back, we didn't even think of discussing beyond COVID, but we are going to discuss that today. So, sir, just to kick it off with you, what do you see happening now that we have almost at the edge of leaving the COVID behind? Touch wood, nothing goes wrong beyond this. Would you speak a little about what is being discussed, which is called the 5T action plan in Government of Odisha? One of the T's is technology. I know that very well. But so can you enlighten us what kind of technology interventions and what 5T is all about? what you are doing to make it successful, and in a post-COVID scenario, how is it makes it more relevant? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Devpriji. Thank you for also listening to my suggestion that we should now fully concentrate on beyond COVID, and we are tired of
Completely agree.
talking about COVID and what all we did during that time. If you remember, when in 2019 this present government under the CM Honorable Sri Naveen Patnaik ji came for the fifth time, he gave this motto of 5T. 5T stands for teamwork, transparency, technology. Done in the right time will lead to transformation. So that is the concept. And I disagree saying that technology is one of those 5 key elements or 4 key elements leading to transformation. In fact, technology is the only thread that chains the all T's leading to the transformation. How I will explain it to you. So when we are talking about teamwork, I'll give examples. Maybe you will forgive me if I take example of what we have done during COVID as well. In terms of teamwork, that we were prepared, we could deal with the COVID situation when the entire thing was stopped. The society stopped, the vehicle stopped, the roadway stopped, the railway stopped. Governments nowhere stopped. Imagine if government would have stopped, what would have happened to this country? Today we are patting ourselves for the momentous occasion of doing 100 crore vaccination, but it is because of thankless job that many at the front line of the government have been able to do. How we have been able to do that teamwork? We have a system. We used to have a system within the secretariat, which is called the Odisha Secretariat Workflow System, which is OSWAS. We had actually taken it to not only the departments but also to the directorates under the departments. My colleague officers from the government side would understand how complex it is. Each department can have 4 or 5 directorates under them, and also we have covered the district collectorates and SPs. So if we need to communicate anything from the district to the chief secretary, it can come in a blink of an eye through the system. No print, no fax, nothing. So you don't have to expect your SO, the desk officers to put up DAC and file. It will come directly. So that is the teamwork we could think in terms of 5T, which augured very well for us during the pandemic time. So it is based on technology. So that my moot point was saying that the teamwork vertical is squarely on the technology platform itself. Similarly, we talk about transparency. In transparency, what have we done? During COVID, you have seen that the COVID dashboard that the government of Odisha provided from day one till now it is going on. We were recognized as the third best COVID dashboard for public purposes by Stanford University. And that's not a ranking where we applied for. We were surprised ourselves that we could be seen by Stanford like that neutrally. Now, in transparency, you have to share information as much as possible in the right manner to everyone. So that is all about transparency from the government side. So all our dashboards that we have created go a long distance in achieving that. Most of our resources of the government that is available digitally is copyright free. So it is if there is a group of guys in IIT Bhubaneswar want to do a study on different impacts of COVID lockdown, all information is available for them free. Nothing is copyrighted. So that's something that we pride ourselves to do in the government, that government data is for the public. Unless, of course, it is some sensitive data which cannot be done. But the default mode is we do it under copyright free, that is CC 4.0, so that anybody can have an access to the data. Same, we have run a program called Mo Sarkar, which is not a feedback mechanism, but it is a very interesting feedback mechanism where, starting from the collectors to right up to Honorable CM, can call anyone who has taken a benefit from the state government randomly. So that random is the most important thing. So we have a bucket of, let's say, about if you take services, it would not be less than 15 crore data. So if from that Honorable CM wants to call, let's say, a lady in Malkangiri who has taken a hospital service, he will be able to, the system will be able to churn out 10 numbers and give it to them. And he can place a call directly and talk to them, finding out how their experiences had been. We started this in police stations and hospitals. You would not believe the quantum leap we took in terms of behavioral aspects. I'm not saying the professional aspects of medical service providing or investigation by the police, but the behavior of all concerned who are in the front line and dealing with public in distress. Anybody who goes to the police station and the hospitals are in distress. That behavior changed so much and given so much of goodwill to the government, you cannot imagine. So this is a form of transparency based purely out of technology. I can go on the same manner. Technology per se is a vertical. You know, we are investing about 600 crores in data center in the state level one, and also a state of the art SOC in the state. So in terms of infra, we are putting in our whatever best that is possible. So if you take each of these verticals, you will see that technology is the underlying theme and language for governance at this point of time. So I think that is what we need to look forward to, bring in technology to make more effective decisions and more efficient manner in which government delivery can be done.
Exactly, sir. I think you have hit the nail on its head, sir. Technology is the way forward. Technology can only help us to make our lives better, and I think we all accept that. The faster we can do it, the more innovatively we can do it, the better it is. On that point, I would come to Mr. Sundar. He has a time limit. He has to move out a little later. So I would please come to him. Mr. Sundar, I have been listening to most of your videos for the last few days to educate myself. You are doing a lot on reaching out to the last mile, to the panchayats, to the grams, the villages, and everywhere. You are doing a lot of data collection. You are doing at what you call gram secretariats and stuff like that. And parallelly, if we talk of cloud today, we talk of a lot of edge computing. We talk of edge cloud, where the cloud can move to your villages, at your remote places where data can be collected and then linked up to your main cloud. What are the plans that your government has, and what are the things that you are doing to move out to, as Mr. Mishra was also saying, data from the base? So how are you collecting the data? What kind of plans and programs do you have? How are you cleansing this data? And how do you plan to build on that as your government plans to provide more citizen services?
GovConnect, thank you once again for giving me this opportunity, and also a warm good morning to all my fellow panelists. Yes, our onus these days has been only on reaching to the last mile, because as I am sitting here and as I have been repeating, 40%, at least 40% of our population in the rural areas are yet to be digitally included. That said, there were two aspects to your question. What are the plans for being cloud enabled? In partial answer to that, for moving to cloud, we have three basic parameters. One is cloud is like a vast elastic computer storage. In the sense, if we are expecting a per day hit or per day request for one service, say around 4 lakhs per hit for one particular service at one particular time slot of a day, then our servers and our computer system should be able to accommodate all those hits. While at other times, it may not be even be greater than 4,000 or 5,000 hits per time slot. Why I'm saying time slot is, it could be per second, it could be per minute, or it could be even per day. If our own servers at the state data center, if they are sufficient to handle this hit, then there is no rationale for moving on to the cloud. Now, there are three basic functions for which usually the industry or the government moves for a cloud. One, as I said, is for elastic storage. The other is for software capabilities. now you take any software capabilities of well-known cloud cloud users like ResearchGate or Bing. Okay? And even in apps like Alexa, the software and algorithm part which the cloud gives. The cloud in cloud you have both the virtual CPUs as well as the storage part. Now you can hire as many number of virtual CPUs at any desired speed you want in the cloud. But if our own data centers are capable of handling these algorithms and the speeds, then there is no necessity for going to a cloud, because there is a problem with cloud in the sense it is just like renting a building. At the end of the day, you won't be owning any asset or infrastructure. So that is the reason Manoj sir was also indirectly referring to it. They have a state-of-the-art data center, and Manoj sir was also right in telling about transparency and how they have linkages with IITB. Unfortunately, we are yet to move in that direction. And as you were saying, in Gram Volume, we have access to vast amounts of data. We have access to the data. We use that for certain amount of MIS. In the sense, we send a MIS dashboard to every HOD for them to take decisions on how their services have been working, where their services are getting choked, who are the persons or officials responsible for choking of the services. This information is partially used by the HODs for cleansing the system. The other aspect is the MIS is also being used for the banking, where payment gateways, FTRs, they are all generated on a weekly basis or a daily basis. Here too, we have some more way to go. Why? Because usually the transacting departments, say I pay electricity bill, the electricity department or the discoms, they insist on payments on the day itself. That is, if the citizen pays through the Gram Sachivalayam or through a Viseva center, the money travels through the payment gateway to the aggregator's bank account. Then it stays with the service provider's bank account. Then the float is created for nearly 4 to 5 working days. And if you aggregate the transactions across the state, the float is quite huge. We have been working on this problem for quite some time, and we have been able to reduce the float from something like 5 working days to 3 working days, but still it is not sufficient. The gold standard is T0. And I am trying to look at other example states where T0 is being done, but we are yet to either we have not been able to search properly, or we are not been able to have a mature system to get money within the T0 on the same day itself. I mean, I'm talking about huge sums of money, because discoms, mining royalties, and the like, they involve large amount of money. And the third part of your question, where are we heading? Again, I would like to borrow a leaf from what Manoj sir said. It is data transparency. The sense, the government data should all be there in the open. Ideally, that is the gold standard for all the innovators, collaborators, both from the government, industry, and the universities, to use the data, use it for their learning, publish papers, and in the whole process, benefit the government by giving us some decision points where we can use it for governance. But here too, we do not have a well established procedure like Odisha for getting the data published from the government. Of course, the individual HODs, the individual departments have cleansed the data and it is available on the websites, but we do not have a standard protocol for making government data available to everybody. We are moving in the direction. We are getting a government order. We are taking the help of MeitY's guidelines on that. But
yeah, I was coming to that. So you are taking out government orders to enable such data movement, sir?
Yeah, essentially, it's a useful framework, because the MeitY prescribes a beautiful set of standards on how you should publish the data and make it open to the government. But here, there is also a chink. And since I am coming from the academic side, I also have, though I am a bureaucrat like many of our other colleagues here, there is a small chink in this armor. There are votaries for both open source and proprietary technologies, including data. For example, the geographical information systems, if you closely observe, the vast gamut of technologies is owned by ArcGIS, which is a proprietary software, and the license cost is quite huge. We also have an open source software called the QGIS, where most of the functionalities for a geographical information system you can do even through open source and using open source data. But there is a difference. In proprietary software, the capabilities are much more, the functionalities are much more, and the algorithms, the optimization are way superior than what we get in open source technologies. Take the Kaggle for example. The software, the algorithms, they're all written at a very low level of understanding and a low contributors they are quite not up to that standard. But if you look at the algorithms and the solutions for the same in some industries like Google, where the access is very difficult, or Amazon, where the access is very difficult, you will see a huge qualitative difference. So the IT industry thrives on proprietary software and proprietary solutions. And here, the government's role is to strike a balance between the both. That is how I view it. And of course, there are votaries both for this side and that side of the bargain, just as Manoj sir very neatly put it. From the government side, you have to be open. That period, that is there. That is all there is to it. But there is also this aspect from the industry. Now with this, I think if there are any questions, I can always keep online.
No, I very well explained, sir. And it was really interesting to hear your opinion about how SDCs should be used for citizen services versus cloud. Exactly. It really opens up a lot of more discussion areas. And now I would like to welcome Madam Sinha and Mr. Mittal to the session. They joined a little late. Madam Mukta Sinha is Secretary, Department of Science and Technology, Art and Culture, Government of Rajasthan. And Mr. Prashant Mittal is the MD of Nixie, and he is very well known in the industry, and I think all of us have met him. Madam Sinha, I know you have a time limit, but before I come to you, I would like to go for a question to Mr. Akashdeep, and then I will come to you. I think we should be able to make your time. Akashdeep sir, I went through some of your opinion and speeches, and you have been doing so many things, agriculture, PhD and whatnot, and they form the basic pillar of, I think, the state's democracy and state citizen service. Very vital areas to work. How do you see emerging technologies in PhD? How do you see emerging technologies in agriculture? Emerging technologies in agriculture is a very hot topic, but I'm sure you are neck deep into it. How do you see the future for areas like this, which has direct link with citizens?
Yeah, thank you, Devapriya ji. First of all, let me share this information. I no longer look after agriculture.
I know that. You were. Yes.
For quite some time, and at one hand there's an agriculture, and on the other hand, this is the cutting edge technology that we are using in the state, and to identify and to see that what interventions we can make it through these technologies for better output in these agriculture and PHE sector. PHE sector, especially, we are dealing with this Jal Jeevan Mission, where we provide water to every household in the rural areas, and also I am looking after one flood and erosion risk management project, and that is also a very hot area, especially for using these technologies. So as you said, this is a very
so flood management is a very vital thing for you, sitting in Guwahati.
Yes.
Very interesting. Yeah.
So agriculture, availability of water to the rural household, and also flood and erosion risk management, which I am looking after. In all these areas, the role of technology, needless to say, is extremely important and extremely crucial. If I say agriculture, for example, we have plethora of activities where the intervention of technology is required, and we are doing, in fact, like the satellite imagery we are using, and then subsequently the kind of patterns we are getting. what crop is being cultivated and for what time, and we also had while I was there, we initiated a project to install sensors and to give us data, especially what is the precipitation, what is the moisture content, how wind is blowing, and also as far as the soil availability, the soil health, the indicators of soil. We were collecting at one single dashboard. We were planning to have that project, and then using AI as I can see the predictive technologies are in vogue these days, and to
Yeah.
see that what kind of the risk can come in the future, the interventions which we may require to do in the future. I hope that project is being taken off. If I talk about flood and risk management, this is a very, very important area as far as using these technologies. In fact, without these technologies, we cannot manage it now, I feel. And we
Yeah,
have one
exactly.
flood uh, early warning system which we have developed using a statistical tool. And this model uses extensive data points from the fields and other satellite imageries, and they predict the water outflow, the cross section of it, where all the obstructions, and where we can have flood in coming. And we have a forecast for next 2 hours to next 48 hours. So we are using these technologies, and I definitely see. In fact, for most of the departments which I'm dealing with, I am the consumer of this information. As far as Director of Information Technology is concerned, yes, we are there to provide and help these departments to come over and use these technologies, and there are other departments also which are coming in a big way for using our technologies. As you know, that Assam has now a full-fledged state-of-the-art state data center, different layers, and we are now telling all the departments to come at a single place and use our data center as far as applications for their applications is concerned and their data management is concerned. We early morning before having this session, I was attending a very important conference for cyber security, where we highlighted the importance of cyber security also, because there's a lot of e-business going on, and there's also associated research involved. And having all the places at one centralized place for all the departments provide a uniformity as far as security and protection is concerned. And also we have other disaster risk and recovery centers for our state data center. We are planning to upgrade it, and our vision is for the future to have cloud services enabled for the department, so that they can have their own, use their own solutions, own softwares or algorithms to run and have this analysis done. For example, platform as a service and container as a service are in pipeline, and we are hopefully going to roll them in near future with continuous integration, obviously. Uh, the the thing which we're still envisaging is to incorporate AI for all and availability to different departments with high performance computing, so that they can use these technologies for their benefit and for their own predictive nature
Right.
of
Right.
services which they can provide to the citizens. And I'm quite hopeful we are having a good start, and we have been quite successful in integrating and bringing all the departments together at one platform. And this is what we are looking forward, and that's it as of now. I'll say from my
Very
side.
good. Using HPC and data science is something which is going to take up big time. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I was talking to an ISRO scientist, sir, some time back. They are ready to give you SAR data, the synthetic aperture radar data, SAR camera data, and they can run AI on them to tell you the moisture content and the mineral content in the soil.
We have we have created a plan of action for almost 35 departments in Assam, with the necessity for and the services which they will provide with these predictive technologies, and
yes.
that is in pipeline, and hopefully in a year or two we'll be coming in big way with the help of ISRO and NESAC. We do have a Northeastern Space Application Center here, and they are
exactly
helping us in a big way, and we see that these projects will change the entire service delivery.
The paradigm. The whole paradigm will get changed. I completely agree with you. Thank you, sir, very much for the insightful information. I would move on to Madam Sinha. Madam Sinha's Department of Science and Technology, and then Art and Culture. It's fantastic combination. How do you see yourself managing both these departments? Are they self-clashing, or you really supplement each other? As per as Einstein said, I don't want to quote him, but he said, all mysterious is actually art and science. So how do you go about doing it, and how do you see the future for information technology and emerging technologies in your state, and what are the things that you are doing?
Thank you, Mr. Debapriya. I just wanted to tell you that life changes in a minute, and so I have managed to offload.
Don't tell me.
Yes, offload one of my departments, which is the Department of Art and Culture, having served.
I was keeping my fingers crossed. I know this happens.
Yes. So it's not just technology, but time also, time and tide and technology. But I will just speak. In fact, today I've joined from Jaipuria Institute of Management because they were teaching. They have just inaugurated their policy leadership lab, in which they are discussing a case study which they did on my work on data analytics in the Department of Food some 2 years back. So I'm very happy to tell you that as a policy maker, my understanding and aim is to be not just talking about tools, because the tools will change. I've seen speakers before me talk of various kind of tools, cloud computing being one of the tools which is available. There are a lot of new tools which will always be available, but the point is for a policymaker to have a philosophy behind what we are using. So what in Rajasthan we are doing right now, because technology is also bringing about a change in how we have to use our manpower. And I have been saying this over and over again, that there are 3 pillars to this whole concept of using technology for, I hate to say smart governance, but that is the in word. I would like to say more citizen-centric governance for that matter. So citizen, of course, is one of the vertical, which is a part of the human resource, apart from our other stakeholders, which are policymakers themselves, who will see a good policymaker is one who is able to anticipate the future much before the future actually occurs. And all our policy making today is happening much after the future is already available to us. So if you look at what is happening in the field of NFTs, because Amitabh Bachchan has just said that he's going to launch his NFT after Ethereum and stuff. So we don't have policy regulations right now. We don't even know whether it's legal tender to have the NFTs, but in the field of art, it is becoming a big thing and people are earning. So cloud will become something which will be replaced by a new tool called NFT, which will come into being. So what is our vision of how do we anticipate the future? Just like the scientists are able to understand the reality much before it is observed in the field. So what have we done? One tool I think that is going to stay for some time is called data analytics, and that is where the officers should be trained. I have been consistently saying this, that DOPs, our government is working on it, that we must have a system in place where, we had something called MIS earlier, which was compilation and collation of data, which helped us to move towards paperless system. But today we have to move beyond paperless system, because we have to do data crunching. We have to add value to data. In the Department of Food, what we did with NIC, I'm very happy to state today, which is being taught today in management schools like Jaipuria, is that you were able to control just by sitting in office without having to do the traditional kind of tools, just by looking at data, by making the data speak to you. And you have about 4.5 crore people in the state of Rajasthan who are beneficiaries of the national food security, with about 27,000 ration dealers. And imagine the number of transactions taking place, and imagine the number of variables on which each and every consumer, which is the person who offloads the beneficiary of the NFSA, and each and every ration dealer who can be judged on various parameters. I think that needs to be extrapolated, that needs to be put in place in each and every department. Somebody mentioned, I think Akashdeep mentioned, predictive sciences. What government of Rajasthan has done very nicely is that we are using our Jan Aadhaar card to do predictive sanctioning of funds in the social welfare departments, which we have too many of them, be it the minorities department, be it the disabilities department, be it the tribal department, be it the social welfare and empowerment departments. So we have to now also look at what technology, use of new technology is doing to the manpower. Today, when I go as secretary in charge of a district in the state of Rajasthan, my district being Bundi, I realized that we need to do away with the whole setup of all these social welfare departments at the district level, and these can be manned by very few people now. You don't need that paraphernalia of these departments. So what is technology doing is technology is also forcing you to look at how to do your human resources better, right? Where do you need recruitment in the government system? Because there is still what you say chow for sarkari jobs. So how are you going to shift that? Where does that shift need to happen? Does the shift need to happen in the health department, where you still need more people to people contact? With machine to machine systems coming in place, with algorithms deciding lot of pattern things in life, what are the departments? And this is called niche use of technology in different departments. So you have about 65 to 70 departments in each state. The first thing that any government should actually be doing, which is what we are working on, is to identify which is the technology and which is the flagship program, or which is the department where that technology can be used. So we have to basically do mapping of departments, mapping of policies and programs with the technologies available, and then rewriting the old policies, which are archaic now, as our, in fact, even our Honorable Prime Minister has said that he must relook at our policies and reframe them in the light of technology. Today, when you can do any meeting with a Facebook Connect or with any of the other systems that you have in place, how should you redefine your tours and inspections in the state? I think that is something that we need to work. Tools will be available and can be outsourced. So what we are spending our Peter's principle time of 80% and 20% is in choosing between tools which are available. My own interaction with various vendors who sell these tools is that the tools are already pre-available, but they are not pre-matched to government requirements. So what we also need to do is do more of what Sri Gajendra Haldia did in writing the model template public-private partnership documents. So I think we also have to look at a tendering process, how the tendering process needs to change in departments, in programs where we need to incorporate technology, because what is happening is the success of the usage of technology, especially what I think Mr. Sundar mentioned about proprietary items. And I can give you one example. Today, what is happening in the government tendering process is that we need to bring more uniformity and more universalization. Should be the biggest act that should come out, is about how do you process, how do you procure technologies which are available through various vendors in similar manner in which we did the private partnership templates that were laid out, which have lasted us even till now. Reason is that if you look at how the tenders are being done, the proprietary items lapse once the tender lapses. That is the biggest flaw, and that is a loophole that needs to be plugged. Every state, I can tell you for sure that Rajasthan, through its IT department, has one of the most futuristic data management center. In fact, the DST has started a 3,600 crore project called the Geodatial Spatial Systems Project. And I think all states must look at DST, Government of India, to be able to use the funds that are available for setting up data centers where the states don't have their own resources. We also have a fifth domain coming into being, which is cybersecurity. The more we interact with technology, especially where finances are involved, we have to build a system in place for the fifth domain, which is the cyberspace, to ensure that misuse of technology doesn't happen, especially because so much of data is being collected at the back end. Today, if you look at all the diagnostic data which is being collected in hospitals at the back end, that data should not get leaked, because tomorrow the same data, which is my personal data, which I have a right to privacy and security of my personal data, can be used for research without my consent. So I think these are things that we should be working on, and this is a template that I think for solving creatively the problems of the interface between governments and citizen is what we must invest our time and energy as policy makers. Our job is not to define between which software is better. Our job is to create the level playing field where the software gets customized to the government's need, which ultimately means the needs of the citizen. And the last point I'd like to say is that we must invest in human resource training, and we that is very important, because again the 2080 principle works, because 20% of us are in the government who need to be trained on what is available so that we can use technology to leverage our work to make it better, with less input, provide more output. And the second most important stakeholder is the 1.3 billion people who are continuously using this technology either on our behalf or on the behalf of vendors that we put out in the market, and they need to be taught of the various loopholes. So I think a huge en masse program of what we did earlier called adult literacy should now get converted into digital literacy program, where each and every person, whether he's educated or not, but he's using a smartphone, because everything has moved online, needs to be taught about the pitfalls of using technology and how to protect their individual data and their individual processing time, and everything that they are throwing out in the market, because we know that it is susceptible to be misused. So I think that plugging is what is very, very important, and policies in these directions should be made. I'll be happy to interact with any government which is working on this, and maybe we can together work on this and take this forward, because this is really a huge body of work, and a very work that needs to be done at the back end to secure our work for the next, I think, 10 or 20 years or maybe more. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, madam. Thank you. Thank you very much. Some very important points you have raked up. You have talked about changing the way the policies are currently there. I am sure you must be trying a lot of Swiss challenge methods to select technologies. They provide you one way of at least, not doing things as per 40 years old plans. Anyway, so there are so much of things I have tried to note: redefining policies, HR training. One point, ma'am, I'll just make here. Sometime back, we published a paper with Gartner where we said of, technologies which are maintainable and sustainable should be done. And HR training of manpower and people and citizen is one of the main things how you can make things sustainable. So very good points, ma'am. I would come, Mr. Vineet, Kumar Vineet, extremely sorry for keeping you waiting, sir. Some of them had a little urgency of moving out. So coming to UP, such a big state, heartland of India, you do so much on IT. You have great data centers, you have great customer interaction centers, you have great citizen service centers, command centers. How do you look at the current, infra that you are building versus cloud infra that you are also building? How do you plan to, as Madam Sinha was talking and Mr. Sundar was talking of using SDC and looking at cloud at a little later point of time? How's UP planning to manage this whole thing? You have huge IT projects. How are you going to do it?
Yeah, thanks, Dimitri. Uttar Pradesh has got a small data center though, and now we are planning to expand it to a 3.0 version, and we are going to revamp our own data center as well. Given the scenario that we have all over India, now we are making, because we are the largest state in the country, definitely that we are, and we are definitely one of the biggest caterers to the services as well. So we have got epicenter in Noida, where we are planning to build up the entire network and plethora of data centers. We have got our data center policy way back in January this year, and through that data center policy, once we started with our idea, we floated this idea and we went into it. We already had more than 13-14 proposals, and some of them have already started building, like Hiranandani has already started, then Adani is there, Control is there, Bank is there. There's so many players, some 30-40,000 crores of investment also coming up. If I talk on the government perspective, then jobs are definitely going to come up. The entire ecosystem is going to develop in that area, and that is going to be in the synergism of the National Capital Region as well. Along with this, if I can see, then in coming few years, maybe this particular region, particular area is going to be in competition with the, or say not just competition, but in tandem with what is happening in Pune or what is happening in Hyderabad or what is happening in Mumbai. I'm not talking about Bangalore because Bangalore is a software hub which is on a different plethora. I'm talking about the hardware, particularly the infrastructure support that these cities have. That is how we perceive. And before I come to the cloud part, I may just take it a premise on which we came up with our data center policy. And that was basically upon the research analysis that we had. Because one thing was that we wanted investment. Second is that IT enablement had to be there. And third point was that the trend that was coming up in the industry. If I quote a recent study, some 400 IT and data center managers were there into it. So public cloud usage is going to increase another by at least 10 to 12% in this next 2 years. Perhaps you as Oracle might also appreciate that. Then software as a service offerings, that is going to increase in a big way. Maybe 5% per annum increase is going to be there. Then co-location statistics is going to be more or less the same because now we are going to expand towards the cloud-enabled services. Now, the basic premise on which the entire scenario or entire ecosystem is developing is agility and flexibility, say one. Then security features, which has to be very advanced, as Madam Sinha was also mentioning, that ultimately it is my data which doesn't go into the gray area. That has to be very important. So advanced security features are there. Then access to resources, the software tools, open tools, so that things may come up easily and adapt easily. We don't need to pay every time what we want to use and what we want to have. So, and lastly, cutting of the cost. So from CapEx to OpEx model, which is the basic premise of how we come up to this entire concept. So if I take the cost effectiveness of the entire scenario, then I would say that we need to have an ability to fully manage security and risk. One. Secondly, we need to have a full control on the latency part of the entire system. And thirdly, we have to get a good availability. And of course, the application performance has to be good. So if I take entire this premise on which the entire concept of our own data center policy was being conceived, then we have got organizations, which, another study which says that more than 30% of the organizations have moved from workloads of data to public clouds or private clouds. So this scenario is coming up in the field in this scenario. Now, if I come back to Uttar Pradesh specifically, I would say that cloud is generally more safe and secure as compared to online premise infrastructure. One, because we have a backend supports strong technical mechanism to deal with it. Instead of one premise or one infrastructure having all the tentacles to manage it, we can just deconcentrate or decentralize the things, and that way how the private partners as well as the public partners come into tandem with each other. Ultimately, everyone has one responsibility, and that is citizen-centric services. And with secure premise. As Madam was also saying that the responsibility or presence of the government should be less and less evident to the people, citizen, so that the services may be more and more clearly visible. As Manoj sir was also saying on the transparency part, the 5T transparency part. So if I take entire concepts into the analysis, and though they're not specifically mentioned or though not categorically listed, but they are very much evident in the Uttar Pradesh data center policy. And through this, we are going to plan to adopt cloud for core infrastructure projects in the state, and we hope to bring about a major boost in the data center ecosystem in India as well. That is how Uttar Pradesh is going to pursue things.
Fantastic, sir. It's always good listening to you, and a very frank feedback from your side. Yes, you are trying to balance between on-prem and on cloud. This thing is really going good. We are getting all type of feedbacks, all type of opinions from the speakers, starting from extreme end of where we want to stick to SDC to moving to cloud. But there is something which all of you can look forward to. You can look at an idea of setting cloud within your state data centers. If you can start thinking in those areas, like when Mr. Akashdeep talked about, doing AI and data science with soil data and with satellite data, you will need a lot of compute. You will need a lot of fast moving parts within the computer. On SDC, setting up GPUs for such calculations may be a little tough. But what you can do is you can set up a cloud within your premises. where the whole public cloud comes within your premises, and you can have GPUs and stuff like that, and you can do this SAR data analysis in a fraction of a second. Anyway, so I would come to, and Mr. Kumar, thank you so much. I would come to Mr. Prashant Kumar Mittal. He joined a little late. He's, as I said, is the MD of Nixie. Sir, a very relevant question for you. I know you've been doing a lot of projects, continuing a lot of projects within the pandemic times, and you are planning a lot of new projects on behalf of the government of India. How do you see, what is your opinion about emerging technologies and cloud being used for managing IT and furthering IT projects going ahead?
Yeah, I think when we talk about cloud and anything which has been which is related with server put at a central place, safeguarded well. So it may be on-prem or cloud and a flexible cloud. Those things are very relevant, and I think most of the speakers have underlined those requirements with the e-government ecosystem. So sorry to bear with me. I am just traveling, so I may be having few disturbances as well.
So kind of you taking the call still, sir. Thank you so much.
So when we were doing all the government projects in pandemic, our first priority was to safeguard the health of our workforce. We had started from 22nd March in this mode where we were serving for 24/7. And first thing, I visited all my data centers and contacted the hygiene staff. That was the most important aspect in pandemic. To run any cloud setup, you need support system. And those were the days when even a single knockdown could cause panic. And luckily, we got extreme support from all of our staff, including data center support person, the technicians, the engineers, the network guys. Everybody supported us, and we could establish all the VCs from the apex chair to all the honorable CMs with that help. And as we move forward, all the systems like e-office, which helped a lot to all government officers to deal with the files. And I could say that e-office made central government operational. And second thing which I would like to tell, that we supported EFMS, which enabled all the financial transactions in government. There was no shortage of fund for any scheme, as all the banks, all the EFMS system, everything was online 24/7. This is another thing where we could, I think, serve the nation. We may be the persons who may not be highlighted as other front line warriors were there, but naturally we were supporting health system, we were supporting transport system, we were supporting all the IT enabled systems in government. So that was done, and all these things were rendered through cloud, the cloud environment, whether it was on-prem servers or the flexi cloud or hyperscale infrastructure. We were able to maintain the service, and there were challenges also, because suddenly the workload got increased manifold. We were to support our programmers so that they can handle things from their home. We had to take support from SDM Noida, SDM Gurgaon, when we took their help to get the godowns opened, to get the laptops shifted from their godowns, the OEM's godown, to individual houses. Though it sounds very easy, but getting passes for those vehicles in the last week of March was so difficult that I myself drove my personal car with my government identity, reached the office of Deputy Police Commissioner, New Delhi, and got 26 passes issued. And then I managed those passes delivered to through taxis to their houses. These are the logistic issues which we face, but we never let any service down. So that was the thing.
Right.
And yeah, end-to-end encryption of e-office, VPN, those are the various services and issuance of data cards with the help of Airtel, BSNL, MTNL, and other service providers during late nights. So that we managed. So everything was okay by 28th of March 2020. And I would like to tell the August gathering here that NIXI was not closed for even a single day since March 2020 till date. We were on. We provided them services which were not available in the market, like oximeters and those things. We supported our staff. You can't work in isolation. You can't only talk about the technology unless until human component is not there. If you are not able to provide the oximeter to the father of your worker, it doesn't make sense. Why and how he will be able to serve you. So we worked on that front also. And I thankfully, we were able to manage the show seamlessly.
Fantastic, fantastic, sir. Mr. Mittal, thank you so much for letting us know what you did. Mr. Mishra started off by saying this 100 crore vaccination has been reached by a lot of soil and blood of people. And yes, I'm sure this also forms a part of it. We have done a round. We have taken fantastic feedback. It was really a very good discussion about SDC, cloud, and policy changes, and doing predictive analytics and stuff like that. I would come to a very important point as we go ahead, and I will go back to Mr. Mishra once again. Sir, emerging technologies, startups, unicorns are very much linked together. They are the people who are really firing up this emerging technologies engine. How is Odisha government? Odisha government has a startup policy, and it's a very known one. How are you managing it? What are the future that you see for it? And how is startups, emerging technologies, and e-governance all merging together to give results? So you are on mute.
My apologies. It's a very interesting question. Actually, the world looks at startups as a different vertical. But I think we are making a mistake here. The mistake is that whether it is a startup, whether it is a 500 crore company, whether it is a $1 billion company, it is still a company solving a problem. We have a lot of problems, whether we are talking about the nation as such, population as such, or government as such. And companies will come forward with solutions. They will thrive who can solve the problem at the best manner. Startups are doing exactly that much better than the normal corporates. So if your Oracle is providing the hardcore service in terms of storage, in terms of cloud, you look at how many startups are able to take out and give something better over the Oracle cloud. And that a large company is it is very difficult on part of the large company to deliver at that agile manner. So I firmly believe that the next decade is the decade for the small companies, the innovators, and the startups who can do disruption at will. Mainly because I think the large companies can afford to fail only once, so they will take less risk. The smaller companies, the innovators, people on the street with an idea, they can afford to fail 100 times and you cannot compete with them. The only large companies which will last are the ones who think like a startup. So you talk about Google, you talk about Facebook. They have verticals which operate exactly like startups. Even for that matter, if you see the iPhone company, Apple, they operate like that. So you need to survive, you need to think this cleverly, smartly. We acknowledge that very quickly. India is a country which colloquially and humorously called as a country of jugards. What exactly is jugad? Jugad is innovation.
Startup.
Jugad is innovation. So you have so much of problem, so little resource to solve. So you have to find a shortcut. Who better than the Indians to solve this? Why else do you think in the software sphere after 1980s, which boomed, that the Indians have taken over the entire world? Our cricket team goes and plays a match in UK. Who feels playing at home? India, not England. So what we have done to the world is by innovating, by showing our jugaad, that is our prowess. In the context of the world, India, I think currently is the second largest startup ecosystem. It is the third largest in terms of producing unicorns over month to month. So we are only behind US and China. We have surpassed UK and Germany. We produce, last 6 months data says that we produce 3 unicorns, Indian unicorns per month. And our total unicorns, I think, has crossed 70. These are huge statements. And coming from there, once we realize that the next decade is not the decade for the big companies, but for the innovators, our policies will have to realign. The governments no longer need to think in terms of allotting large space of land. That is not going to happen in the IT field. What we need is create an ecosystem where, starting from thinking to corporatization, both can be done by these innovators with help. What is the downside of startups? Downside of startup is that they are small, lean. They know one part, how to solve that problem. They don't know how to scale, how to access the market, how to make a company out of that and run it. So once you do all of that, it becomes a large company. So in the small company, when it is there, and the core competency, the USP of that company is thinking quickly to solve problems, the rest of the things will have to be provided in terms of a fabric by others. I'm not saying government is the only player. You see the venture capitalists today, the seed fund that comes in from companies like SoftBank, they're huge. In fact, a company like SoftBank, probably its market cap is more than 40 countries in the world put together. So it's not only the government, but all of them are seeing value in that. You mentioned about the Odisha startup policy. You'd be very happy to know that in next month, we are completely coming out with a new startup policy for the next 5 years. We have a plethora of incentives in there, but incentives are not the only things which matter. What matters is the qualitative input that we give in terms of handholding. So we are creating center of excellences. We are creating programs in which we are asking hundreds and hundreds of startups to come up. Today we have reached about 1,700 registered startups in Government of India alone, the fourth largest state in the country. And we will do mentoring through PPP. Government cannot mentor these people at all. If I start doing it, all the startups will fail.
Yeah.
If I get in somebody who is in the industry,
Agreed.
they can mentor the best. So people like you, Depreji, can be a good mentor for the cloud solutions. So I think
Right.
the startup policy ecosystem in Odisha is going through a very transformative process now. Within a month, you will see how it will work out. And I have a lot of confidence and pride in general people of the country and people of the state to be able to innovatively solve problems. So starting from how to get your egg and milk in the morning to how to take a better selfie, every problem can be solved by our people in a better manner than what has been done in the West. So I think we should be very gung-ho about the startup ecosystem, and you will see not very far away, this will be the lead country, what China has showed to the world in terms of manufacturing. We will be able to show to the world in terms of innovation to the entire world. We will be the world number one on this. I'm very confident about this.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Sir, I'll come back to Mr. Sundar, Mr. Akash on this point. Sir, you talked of startups. Madam Sinha talked of training. Now, Mr. Akashdeep, coming to you, you are based in Guwahati, Northeast. You also have good engineering colleges, good polytechnics with churn out, lot of good engineers and technical minds. Even today, people in arts are getting into startup. It's not necessarily needs to be an engineer or a polytechnic pass outs. how much do you think training these young minds in latest technologies, like Oracle, we give free training to everybody. Our Oracle Academy does so. We are trying to do with Government of Assam. You must be, I don't know if you're aware of it. We are trying to do that, but that's a different story. As Mr. Mishra was saying, companies like Oracle, Amazon, we should also take up the cudgel. How do you think these minds can be fired? Somebody passing out of an engineering college in Dhubri maybe have very good ideas in mind, but if he's only trained a little more on data science, he can start a startup.
Yeah.
How will you do that?
Yeah, definitely. You're absolutely right. As all the esteemed speakers have already emphasized the fact that use of technology is definitely crucial for whether it is delivering services to the citizens by the government or by the startups or for the innovations or whatnot. As I already mentioned earlier today, I had a session which is still going on cyber security for MSMEs, which was obviously hosted by the Department of Industries and Commerce here. And I came to know that they have an incubation center here for startups, for entrepreneurs, and they are doing quite well in this. They are not only telling them how to have their business, consolidated, and also they are telling, and they have asked today that we should come and we should collaborate in telling them about these technologies, these tools which are available for them, so that they can outgrow their business, their outreach, their access to different markets further enhanced. So definitely you're right. I mean, we have a potential. We have professional institutions here. We have IIT. We have other engineering colleges. Not necessarily from engineering background, as I told. We have IIM also nearby in Shillong. People generally here in the northeastern states, then gone are the days when it was thought that they are little, not very active as far as that's concerned. These young boys and girls today we see are very energetic, full of energy in their eyes, and they are ready to do a lot of changes. They have done in the hospitality sector and the aviation sector, as you are already aware.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
slowly, as far as I know, for agriculture, because I have worked in agriculture sector, I have seen young minds coming from abroad, having exceptional professional qualifications, work with esteemed, reputed, world-class companies from UK, USA, and they have come up here and they have taken up agriculture, the modern agriculture. They are using all the technologies available, all the data or all the advice which we can give it to them. We were forming FPOs, that is farmers producers organizations, and these young boys, these professional or we call it the progressive farmers, they are the part of the huge chunk of these associations. So yes, definitely great, but we have to roll out a comprehensive study here, and definitely we are working on that with the help of the incubation center which we have here. The role of new technologies, the data management, the clouds, and as far as others, the other tricks which are there is definitely required, and we are thinking on those lines, and I think it will be some efforts will be visible soon, and we'll be able
to. Very, very, very assuring to hear that, sir. This is how it should happen, sir. This is how the youth of this country can be made employable. They should start. Everybody should not be looking for a government job. The startups are really going to save starting your own business. Coming to Vineetji, you have an association with IIT Kanpur and you have a startup policy. Could you please elaborate on what's UP government's plan in this regard?
Yeah, actually, the Uttar Pradesh startup policy of 2020 has the vision to establish a world-class startup ecosystem in the state by developing a robust infrastructure and providing conducive policy environment. That has been the basic premise. And the emerging technologies that we are looking forward to is artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain technology, aerial technology, sector-specific technologies which are coming up beautifully. Some of them we have also used. For example, artificial intelligence and IoT we have used in mining, and it has given us very good dividends. So, talking about the institutional handholding that we have done, so I would like to mention three major handholdings that we have started, and it must give results in another couple of years. One is with artificial intelligence in collaboration with IIT Kanpur, so that an emerging technology era comes up, and IIT Kanpur is in collaboration with the state of Uttar Pradesh in a big way. Secondly, blockchain technology, which we are going to see. And as I've said earlier also, I always perceive blockchain to be the next enabling thing, maybe another 4 or 5 years, which is going to be something life after Google, something like coming up. I cannot categorically say, but yes, that is
Yeah,
the scenario.
yeah. Right,
So
exactly.
blockchain technology, we have taken Dr. Abul Kalam Technical University, AKTU, which is a umbrella of colleges established in Lucknow, and some 30 colleges are there involved into the blockchain technology specifically. DLT Labs is the collaboration partner, and we have got one of the largest blockchain technology company that you know. And yes, that is going to be something that we are looking forward to, particularly in Khasra and Khathoni part, and cases of revenue where we are trying to inculcate this blockchain technology. There are 14
Wow.
fields of
Very
revenue part. 8 is already covered. We are working on another 6 so that we can come up
So
with
you are
this.
planning to get the Moza cut maps and the registration documents into blockchain?
Exactly. And not just that, because 1359, right from 1359 firstly say up tak ke all the issues have to be tracked. So we are
Yeah.
trying to develop those things
That's
so
why I'm
that
asking this question. Right?
yeah, we want to get it transparent. It's not easy, I must say. It's not at
It's
all
not
easy.
easy. It's not at
In
all
fact, very
easy.
complicated. But let us work on it. We'll get something out of it. We'll definitely get something out of it.
Yeah, I will look forward to it, sir. Very good. Go ahead, please go ahead.
Lastly is the drone technology, which have 35 colleges are there into it basically, and because drone technology is something which is going to happen in, say, law and order, it is going to happen in analytics, it is going to happen in agriculture. Recently, Kumbh Mela, it was used just like anything. We had the artificial intelligence and drone technology converged together, where you could exactly anticipate कब भीड़ सबसे ज्यादा मैक्सिमम हिट करने वाली है. So that was something beautifully done. So to sum up, these are the 3 technology parts in which government of Uttar Pradesh is going to. Thank you.
Fantastic. Artificial intelligence, blockchain, drone technologies for artificial, for agriculture, for law and order. Beautiful, fantastic, sir. Very assuring points from you. Sundar Saab, if you are still there and listening to us, any feedback from you as to how you plan or what are the startup initiatives that you have for your state? I don't think he's there.
I think so. He has left for the meeting with this. Yes.
Yeah, maybe. One last question I had for Mr. Mittal. He got cut off in between. So you are going to do a lot of projects in the future. How much do you see the role of these startup and unicorns participating in those projects, or placing it in a different manner? How much of emerging technology components do you see coming up in these future projects, and how you are going to manage them?
Rightly said by my predecessor about the importance of a startup, because government can't do anything and everything. So we have to leverage their capabilities and their willingness, their zeal, their energy. And starting from this year, last year, we have started partnering with startups. And specifically, we are finding roles for them, because they may not be able to push large funds, but we have derived certain portion of cake for them, and we are interacting with them so they can help us. And that government business experience working in government, because working in government, they come across a population of 134 crores. This is the demographic dividend, which is not replicable in any other sector. You see, when I was in rural development, we started AI and ML techniques for identifying kacha houses, because in Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, it was planned like that. One who is not having any house, or living in kacha house, kacha wall, kacha roof, or less than 2-room house, like that. So we started that thing not to just be dependent on the survey forms, but their photos were tried to be analyzed, and we trained around 5 lakh, trained with a system with 5 lakh photos. Efficiency was not that good, but there was always possibility of improvement. So we used those technologies, and there were, in likewise in MG Narega, we were having certain problem statement where attendance of worker was an issue. So we also tried to solve it with the photo analysis, and it has also gained ground up to 80% success rate. Yes, there is a chance of improvement, but the possibilities are huge. That I can say for the startups, and because when we go to the already established institutions, they may not be able to work in vulnerable zones like northeast or less developed zones. So their startup plays a very vital role. They used to go to the far off areas also because they are in need of business. And India is very mixed geographical terrain. So we are using their capabilities and their gene for all out, I think, development of both the vulnerable class and the startups also.
Fantastic. And that's very assuring, sir. NIXI being one of the major procuring agencies for government, it would be great to see, unicorns and startup getting their due recognition, and it also benefits everybody. That's what I think the whole house agrees. So I think, Fahim, we don't have much more time left, and we need to
Yes, sir.
So once again, a very heartfelt thanks to all the participants. I personally felt that we had a fantastic discussion around some very touching points. Mr. Mishra, as usual, very well. Thank you very much. Akashdeep sir, thank you very much. Prashant sir, thank you so much. I have not met a lot of you for a long period of time. Very soon, I have been promising Mr. Mishra that I'll go and meet him, but I think I'll do it soon. Thank you very much. I once again thank Fahim, GovConnect to give us this opportunity. Fahim, over to you.
Thank you, Dev sir, and thank you all the speakers. The session was really interesting, and I think so. There's a lot of takeaway for the audiences as well as the other states from each other. Basically, we try to create a knowledge sharing platform. So this is a knowledge sharing platform, what I say. So it's all about learning from each other. So I would like to present small mementos to each and everyone. So we'll be sending this over an email also to all of you. So the first backend team, the first certificate is for Manoj sir. If you can just bring it on screen. Thank you, Manoj sir.
Looks lovely.
And Manoj sir has been like a really ardent supporter for us, and he's helped us. He has guided us a lot. So next we'd love to again come back to you, sir, for the next session.
Anytime.
Then I'd like to present next token of appreciation memento to Mr. Akashdeep sir. Thank you, Akashdeep sir, and you have been doing a great work in your state, and it was really interesting to hear all the things which has been the state government is doing, and the roles which you are playing. So it's really interesting, sir, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Mr. Devapriyaji, also, and to Mr. Fahim for having this.
So kind of.
So next token of appreciation, a small memento, speaker memento to Mr. Prashant. Thank you, Prashant sir. You have been, NIXI is doing some great work with the states and across the country. You have been helping all the states, and it's really a great initiative and the things which you are doing. So thanks a lot, sir. And lastly, as the other speakers are not here, so I think so at the last certificate is for Mr. Devapriyanandan sir, who has moderated this panel in a great manner and actually finished it on time. Thank you, Dev sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Fahim. Thanks,
everyone,
thanks to all the speakers for supporting me for this during this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you so
Thank you.
much, sir.
Goodbye.
So-
Thank you.